What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today we're going to be talking about Pliny the Younger and whether or not he is an independent source of a historical Jesus. We will be looking into who Pliny was, what he said, and why he actually isn't evidence of a historical Jesus. If you're interested in mythicism's argument against the evidence, then please stay tuned. Alright, so Pliny the Younger. This is yet another instance of somebody in the 2nd century mentioning Christians or what Christians believed, but not actually providing first-hand account of a historical Jesus. Now, Pliny lived between 62 CE and 113 CE. In about 111 or 112, he wrote to Trajan talking about these Christians that he was interrogating. He describes how the Christians were interrogated by asking them if they were indeed Christians like 3 times. If they confessed to being a Christian each time, then he would sentence them to death. And he also talks about what the Christians believed as well. They affirmed, however, the whole of their guilt, or their error was that they were in the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light, when they sang in alternate verses a hymn to Christ as to a God, and bound themselves by a solemn oath, not to any wicked deeds, but never to commit any fraud, theft, or adultery, never to falsify their word, nor deny a trust when they should be called upon to deliver it up. After which it was their custom to separate and then reassemble to partake of food, but food of an ordinary and innocent kind. So as you can tell, they talked about the very basics of their faith. Their ceremonies and what they did to worship their god. He also mentions a resurgence of temples and a demand for sacrificial animals. For this contagious superstition is not confined to the cities only, but has spread through the villages and rural districts. It seems possible, however, to check and cure it. 'Tis certain, at least, that the temples, which had been almost deserted, begin now to be frequented, and the sacred festivals, after a long intermission, are again revived. While there is a general demand for sacrificial animals, which for some time past have met with but few purchasers. Now, these texts are well supported and are written in the same manner as Pliny's other works. And even Tertullian knew about Pliny's writings by 196 CE. So there's no real question of interpolation or any kind of altering of the text. This is solidly Pliny the Younger. Some key indicators that no interpolation happened are the negative and disparaging tone towards Christians in the letters surrounding this entry, as well as describing some Christians as returning back to a Greco-Roman belief. With all that said, Pliny definitely doesn't prove that Jesus actually existed. Being that he wrote this in about 111-112 CE, it's far more likely that he just got his information from the Christians that he was interrogating. I mean, he says as much, having tried them in court and interrogating them about their beliefs. So, I would hope that he knew what it meant to be a Christian and what their beliefs were, considering that he spent a lot of time interrogating them. There are some Christian apologists that want to describe one portion of Pliny's entry here where it talks about worshiping Christ as to a god. They want to use that as some kind of indicator that he was actually a man on earth, and that's how Pliny indicates that Jesus actually existed. This is a purely semantical argument, and if you check out Van Voorst's book, Jesus Outside the Bible, you will find that he totally debunks this notion, because the actual wording that is used does not necessarily mean that he was a human person. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely get Van Voorst's book. Pliny also describes the beliefs of Christians in a very basic and general way, and does not mention any kind of evidence for historical Jesus at all. He talks about how Christianity was spreading through the rural areas. So apparently Christianity woke some kind of fervent belief in the community at large, at least enough for Pliny to notice it. Now, Pliny the Elder, who is Pliny the Younger's uncle, he's an important figure that we could talk about. because Pliny the Elder could have actually recorded Jesus. He never did, though. Pliny the Elder had no idea about Christians or Christianity or an executed man named Jesus. It doesn't support their particular argument, so they're not actually going to mention Pliny the Elder. Now, Pliny the Elder was born in 23 CE and lived up to Mount Vesuvius erupting, where is the best guess for us placing his death, which occurred in 79 CE. During Pliny's time, he wrote a book called Natural History, which covered a wide variety of different subjects, which, kind of made it an encyclopedia of sorts. He talks about technology, science, and other historical things in the first century. Now, among those things was astronomy and geography. Pliny the Elder doesn't record any of the events that the Gospels attest to. Like, that would be noticed either in the stars or on the ground. And by all that, I mean like the darkness that supposedly covered the land when Jesus was crucified, or the earthquake that happened when Jesus crucified. He would have wrote these things down in those particular sections of his work. But more importantly, he didn't record any kind of Jewish uprising led by a Jesus character. Another important fact is that Pliny the Elder was actually in Rome while it burned. As you may know, Tacitus claims that Nero blamed the Christians, but given that Pliny the Elder was there when Rome burned, and he wrote about Rome burning in his books, he doesn't actually blame the Christians. He doesn't know about the Christians, so that kind of puts a little bit of a question mark on whether or not Tacitus actually blamed the Christians, but that's a different video. Now, the earliest hard date that we can get for natural history is about 77 CE. That's when it was dedicated. And now this is about a good 40 years prior to Tacitus. So if you were wanting a more historical account of the burning of Rome, I would think that you would want to trust Pliny the Elder before you trusted Tacitus. So Pliny the Elder is actually really good evidence against the biblical and some historical evidence for Jesus. Now, like I said before, Pliny the Elder is one of many different names that you could bring up that don't record Jesus, but actually should have. Right now on the screen, you can see a long list of names here of people that should have actually recorded Jesus in their time, but they didn't. They had the chance to record Jesus, but Jesus or Christians never appear in their work. When your list of sources that don't mention Jesus but should mention Jesus is longer than your list of sources for a historical Jesus, that should make you question things. Thank you, heathens, for joining me today for this quick video about Pliny the Younger and Pliny the Elder. If you would like to know more about mythicism, please check out my playlist about the question, did Jesus exist? If you will, go down below and leave me any kind of comments or thoughts that you might have about this video. While you're down there, make sure you like and subscribe if you like this kind of mythicism content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice, and I will see you heathens later.